It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. Beautiful day. Can we plug them up in the neighborhood? Would you be mine? Are we still on? Because I can't respond to comments without the tablets. So I'm going to try to get on the tablets. We're live on Facebook now. All right. So can you see comments? Because I can't even see them off my phone.
Yep.
All right. So hi everybody. It's a good day. Is our phone lines working?
Yes.
Okay. Got a lot to talk about today. It is a holiday weekend. Just came back from the groundbreaking of Pilgrim Village, which is going to be a affordable workplace, what they call workplace housing facility, which means the rents will be significantly less than market rate apartments. Across from Pilgrim Village is a market rate. We can hear you breathing. You breathing hard today. You must have been running. You've been running. I said I hear you. It's like in your mic.
Because I'm sitting over top of my the mic from my fault.
Oh, okay. Like every 2 seconds, it was like. The apartments across the street are market rate. Now, one of the things that the Fruit Belt community and the community at large has said, and even in their strategic plan that was put together a few years ago, is that they wanted rentals, affordable rentals, but they also want some houses to be built that are affordable. And trust me, we are working hard to make that happen. I was on the phone today with a bank, on the phone today with the director of strategic planning to start talking about how we put up more, because there's a market out there of people who want to own their own homes, and everybody's not meant to be a homeowner. It's
No.
just like everybody's not meant to have a car. But for those who desire it, I want to make sure, the market is crazy right
Yes,
now.
it is.
And what a few years ago used to cost $80,000, people are asking $200,000 for garbage.
Yes, they are. And getting it.
Well, this is the unfortunate part. If you look at it, talking about Pilgrim Village, if you look at Pilgrim Baptist Church, which was involved with Pilgrim Village back in some time ago when Trammell was alive, Judge Trammell. At the end of the day, the house next door to Pilgrim Baptist Church on Michigan, which is owned by a slum lord because of the condition of the house, they put up the house and for sale. Because I've been on them, and I'm just word to the wise. I'm getting ready to put a slumlord sign up. Doing all the process to get a slumlord sign on that property, and to have a press conference there. But crazy price for a house that's got a tree growing out of the middle.
Wow.
No windows. Windows are gone. Homeless people sleeping in the back. The other day, the church went over to clean it up, and it's very difficult for the city because it's private property. So the church, big ups to Pilgrim Baptist Church, went over, but the price that they are asking for this garbage. Now the house is historic, and it's not going to be torn down because it looks as if it may have been the parsonage to the church at one point or another. So the house is historic. However, I want to be clear. The current landlord, the current owner, I should say, is doing nothing. And here's what I found out this week. It's not even in housing court. I thought it was in housing court. we can't find right now. So
Looking at the pictures, looking at the pictures online, you would think this should have been in housing court.
and I'm not sure why it isn't, because we've called the inspectors on it several times. So now we're just following up to make sure all of the procedures have been met. So my point was, we know that housing is going way up. And in order for people to stay in their neighborhoods, there are some people who really want to own housing. Some don't qualify in the regular market. Others, they're just being priced out, because I know people have been looking for a house for over a year now. And at the end of the day, they cannot find affordable housing. So we have to, as a government, seek out those opportunities. You know, there's money that is being made available right now from the federal government through the state of New York. I was this morning with Lenny Skrill from the state of New York, who basically shepherds that money through the neighborhoods. He talked about how many projects right now are developments. I don't like using that word project because how many developments. And by the way, there is talk right now going on about the I'm going to call them Perry projects. Now, I know there's a whole lot of conversation about names right now, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. But a whole lot of conversation going on about Perry projects is where my family's from. Now, y'all can call them Perry housing. You can call it Perry whatever. End of the day, I know it is Perry projects. And if the people of Perry projects don't want to be called Perry projects anymore, then that's a discussion that we should have. But money's going there. I think since the whole stadium deal is basically dead for Buffalo, it proves now what people said for years, that there was no development in Perry because of the possibility of a stadium.
Well, it doesn't prove, it implies.
It proves for me. You use your words, I use mine. At 57, I say what the hell I want to say.
Well, you fine.
It proves for me that there was a holding of that property. Now let's move forward. Let's move forward and build something, because people, when we talk about homeless, a lot of times people think of homeless as living under a bridge. And there are people who are homeless who are couch surfing.
Yes.
And I know for a fact of that, going from one house to another house that's homeless. And if the facilities are full, and let's just be honest, most people don't want to take their children into a facility.
Right.
And so they go to relatives and all that. I was talking to a guy, and we're going to talk about this whole name thing. So get ready. We're going to talk about this name thing. At the end of the day, I took an Uber the other day, and it was a young man from Bangladesh. He's now an American, and he was driving the Uber. He said he just moved to Buffalo a year ago from New York. So I asked him what he did for a living, and he said, I'm doing it. I'm driving Uber. But he's a lawyer, actually. He was a lawyer in Bangladesh. And I said, so why aren't you practicing here? And, he talked about, he said, I just got lazy, and, in New York. Now, listen to this. In New York, he said, I did everything from working a pizza parlor, DoorDash, Uber, he just had all this stuff. He said, and I was buying a house in New York City. We were going to buy a house. I don't know which part of New York. He said, and the average price for a small house is in between $600,000 and $800,000. He said, so I saved up $200,000. I want y'all to hear me. I want you to hear me. I want you to hear me. He said, I saved up $200,000 because I talked to a gentleman the other day, I think it's Sam's or BJ's, and he was like, well, the new Americans, they get all these tax breaks and they don't have to pay taxes. And I was like, sir, tell me where that came from. Tell me where it came from, because I don't know of any group of people who don't have to pay taxes, except unless you're Native American and you're on Native American soil. And then they have their own structure. But other than that, If you open up a deli store, you got to pay taxes. Now, is there some people in the deli store industry that's scheming? I won't deny that. But they didn't figure out how to scheme under the letter of the law. I'll talk about that another day. Here's my point. He said he came to Buffalo to visit a friend who was encouraging him, you got to look at Buffalo. So he says he came to Buffalo, and the friend said, hey, how much, he tells him about what he's looking at mortgage. They've got a real estate agent. They're looking for houses under $1 million. Buffalo, hear me. Looking for houses under $1 million. He said his friend takes him around Buffalo and says, for the $200,000 you saved, you can buy a house for cash money. And guess what he did? He moved his whole family to Buffalo and bought a house. And he says to me, I don't even have a mortgage. And then he said to me, and all of my family lives with me.
God bless him.
His mother, his father, his 3 children, him and his wife in a 3-bedroom. And he said that's rather normal.
Yeah.
And so, my message to the wise, if you can own, get in now. Now, I know what somebody's going to say, interest rates are high. Well, interest rates are high, but once you are in your home for a period of time, and if interest rates go down, trust me, the banks will be coming after you, new banks, to refinance. It happens. Trust me. I've owned property since I was 20-something years old. So, yes, interest rates are high. Yes, it's costing a lot of money right now. I know people saying sooner or later the bubble's going to burst, but understand, unless there is a great recession or a depression, the property values are probably not going to go down significantly. I don't think you're going to see a house that's selling for $200,000 now start selling for $40,000 again in Buffalo, because we have never seen it again in New York City. You didn't see it in Chicago, downtown. Somebody mentioned San Francisco today. You ain't see it. It stayed high, and it is where it's going to be. And that was why the big push for the raise in minimum wage, the big push for higher wages, for living wages, so that if you got to pay $1,000, well, shoot, it's probably more than that now. If you got to pay $1,800 a month for rent, you got to be able to make that money.
Absolutely.
So I am really working closely with people who want to find a way to put up affordable housing that is for sale. And I want to press this to everybody. There are so many programs out there, and not all of them work, for first-time home buyers. You got to be as hungry to own a home as you are to eat a meal. Like, if you ain't ate for a couple of days, you got to be that hungry to be like, I got to find something to eat, because having land is powerful. I remember, I've preached this, I've taught it, I have practiced it here at True Bethel. Years ago, when people were giving True Bethel property, like literally, here, we'll take this as a write-off. And I remember the trustee board that we had then, some on trustee board ministry was like, oh, why don't we just get rid of these houses? Why don't we? And I'm like, no. The market will change. And having land, whether you know it or not, is having power.
It sure is.
But it's more than, it's not political power as much as economic power.
God ain't making no more land.
The land that we have is the land we have. And I won't be here when y'all buying land on the moon. And that's a long trip. I don't even like driving like 2 hours. Can you imagine, like, I'm about to go to my summer home on the moon in the next couple well, it's gonna take us a few days, but we'll be there.
Few days.
How you going? I'm going Spirit.
And when you take off in space, you can get there on this day, but you got to wait for the right gravitational rotation to come back.
Talking about a layover.
Yeah, I'm good on that.
If you think it's a layover in at Washington Dulles, You better get ready for the layover space. So all we got is here for right now. This is it. Unless you are Elon Musk, unless you all these people with all these gazillions of dollars, this is what we have, folks. This is what we have. Let me deal with this right off the top because I don't run away from a subject. I know the city is every 10 years, and I'm only going to speak briefly. I'm not going to go into detail because of pending litigation. And they'll grab this tape and say, "But Pridgen said." So I just want to give you a snapshot that every 10 years after the census, you have to redraw the lines of districts, and there are certain things that you take into account, like keeping communities together, like communities. So African American communities, Hispanic communities, whatever it is, it could be. The list is too long, right? At the end of the day, what occurs is there's a commission that is sat. That commission comes up with a map. That map is sent to the Common Council. Common Council votes, has a hearing. The commission has a hearing. The mayor's office has a hearing that will come up after our decision. At the public hearing the other day, we heard from some citizens who were concerned about the map, concerned about the process. So when you set up these schedules, we scheduled to vote because a lot of times you don't have a whole lot of feedback. So you set up the vote to happen on a certain day. Because of some of the concerns that we heard, I wanted to just take a pause, take a breather, talk to our corporation counsel, talk to folks on the commission, make sure that people understood they were heard. And not only just we're going to hear it and delay it, but we've been doing some of the homework. In asking our corporation counsel, do the homework, help us to understand this, and this. So, yes, it was paused. And I know there was a press conference yesterday, but we were pausing it and before the press conference, but I really, really, really needed to get the buy-in of all of the council members, and I wanted them to support that pause. And they did. They did. So I want to say that to the public. The council members did. And so now we'll figure out next week after the holiday how it goes. So I just wanted to put that out there because I think that at times, people think, oh, government doesn't hear it. They do. Well, I don't know about all government. I know that we listen. And there were some good things that I really agree with. And one of them I will talk about. And that is, I believe that the city of Buffalo needs an at-large seat again. Now, for what that means, folks, all of the 9 council members right now represent a district. So your concentration is on your district. Even me as the president, a lot of times people call me, and I want to give this little teaching and say, well, you're the president, so you represent the city. That's not true. I do. I mean, as George K. Arthur used to tell me, when you're a black council member, you every black person's council member. And I hope I hope people see me as representing in here in Buffalo. At the end of the day, though, I'm only elected to represent Ellicott. We used to have at-large. I think there were like 3 at-large. Yep. And the council president used to be elected by the people. There was a push, Kevin Gong years ago pushed governments all over Western New York to downsize. And the way you downsize is you have to do it by referendum or vote. The people have to vote. And there was millions of dollars spent on campaigns on whether you downsize or not. And the voters, I want y'all to hear me, because some people will tell you, well, the Common Council should add seats. We can't. Hear me, folks. That is only done by referendum. That means a vote of the people. So even when you're redrawing a map, you cannot redraw a map and say we're going to have 10 districts. You can't. We cannot. The people. So I am putting forward a resolution to begin a process to look at adding at least one at-large seat. back to the Common Council. Now, the reason it was cut out before, one of the reasons was economics. It was being said, hey, City of Buffalo's broke. That's another person that you got to pay. That's another staff you have to pay, yada, yada. We don't need this much. And that's what people who won said. We don't need, this is over-representation. Well, I think that was a horrible mistake. And I've talked to people on both sides of that issue who were like, hey, we tried to offer that there would be one at large, and the other side didn't want to hear it, so they just stopped talking to it, all that kind of stuff. And for me, it's easy to fight, but if everybody's just fighting and you're not getting anything done, then everybody just gets bruised up, and there's no winner. There's no winner. So at the end of the day, I think it's okay to have this conversation about at-large seats.
And I was just going to say on that, I think we actually are going to have to add two, so you can have the split vote, or you have to designate who splits the vote. Like,
you mean because there would be 8 people?
It would be 10.
I mean 10 people, right?
Yeah, so you would need the
11.
So 11th, yep.
That's why I want to just look at the process, look at what would have to happen, and to see what the appetite of the people is. Now, because when you are a district council member, you look out for your district. You look out for your district. Look out for Ellicott. I wanted to make sure that Ellicott looked like Ellicott has looked, and that the people are represented in this whole thing. So at the end of the day, the at-large person has to look out for everybody. The at-large person has to say, hey, okay, Pridgen feels this way, but that's where you get that kind of balance. But I feel this way, and then so you have more than just one representative. Mm-hmm. You have your district representative, and you have your at-large. If it's 2, you got 2 at-large representatives, because the thing about at-large, they don't just represent like a side of town.
Right.
I was an at-large when I was elected to the Board of Education back in ancient history. I was elected not as a district person. I was an at-large board member. So I had to run across the entire city. And the decisions I made, I had to think of the entire city. That's the difference. Seamus. Oh, I can't see. Seamus Gallivan says, yes, please. Push to bring back at-large seat. Would you need to add an even? Oh, he just brought up the same thing.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's what I want people to understand, because sometimes we can hear stuff and not understand what it is and how to do it. And another good thing that I liked that I heard is about continuing to educate people about the government process. Now, let me say this, because we already planned. Yesterday, I was at the Dorothy Collier Center on East Utica, and I was so glad to hear what they said, and I'm going to take them up on the offer. They want to make sure that their facility becomes basically an empowerment facility, education facility, that people can come into Dorothy Collier, and I want them to have different workshops on, government processes, on just different things, that you go, let me look at the schedule over at Dorothy Collier and go over and learn some of these things. But I am so disappointed that Spectrum moved us to Siberia on the government channel, because to me, that's a great place to be able to, and I used it, I pushed for it, for council members were not utilizing that. Council members do, but not as much as we need to, because right now the viewership is so low because nobody knows where the daggone channel is. I should have told them when they wanted to use True Bethel to do that town hall. I'll let you use True Bethel. You got to move us back up to 18 and 19. But I think utilizing the social media to educate people more, I'm going to take that. I'm going to take that under my wing for what I do, because I do think that is something important.
And I definitely agree. And that was one of the takeaways, even listening from Tuesday. I was like, we could do a better job in that education
Yeah.
and getting information out there. And, you know, we have a great central staff that's now focusing on a lot of media things. And I
Yeah.
think this is some of the stuff they should take up in
Oh,
pushing
I
out
definitely do.
reapportionment.
We are going to do it.
And they did start with the budget this year and creating a public guide to the operation budget. And I
Yeah.
just think we keep progressing that way.
Yes, and that's a good point because they did a great job with that. I don't know if people realize the city council, if I'm not incorrect, is one of the only government bodies that is still allowing people to speak on Zoom. You know, so that's a lot of work, but that's important. All right, so we got that down pat. So I want to see this at-large seat, or at least let me just say this: I want to feel the people's appetite for it.
And I was just getting ready to ask before we change, because in that conversation, like you said, I want to see what even, because should the council president go back to one of the at-large seats and the people vote in the council president, I'd be interested, like you said, to see the stomach for that.
Let's see that. And I want to say this because when people come to a government body and they speak their mind, whether it's organized or not organized, to me, it doesn't have to be a battle. I mean, some things you're going to win, some things you're going to lose. Some things are going to happen the way you want it to, and some things are not. But the one thing, and I hope I've shown this in my 11 years here, is that listen to people. If you can't do something, just be honest. And but don't patronize them by saying talk to me and then don't even say anything. So next week we'll see if we got a response and we go on from there. All right, let me go to the next topic, and that's this whole. Oh, first of all, sorry, I meant to say congratulations to the first woman chief judge in the Buffalo City court system, Chief Judge Darius Pridgen. I want to say how proud I am of her at 41 years old, being the chief judge. Now, I want you all to understand, just like the council president, she's not the judge's boss. Like you all elect your judges. But she does now coordinate the court. She does give direction, especially when new judges are being placed. So that opens up another seat for a judge, because now she probably will still be on the bench to close out, I think, some cases that she was working on. But other than that, she won't be on the bench every day. She will be the chief judge. And on the same day, and I want that the mayor is the one who fills the vacancy. Mm-hmm. So when Craig Hanna, African-American man, went to become state Supreme Court judge, it left his job open. The mayor appointed Judge Darius Pridgen. Now, after she puts in her paperwork, she has to run for the seat. So I believe soon the Democratic Party will make an endorsement of someone. I don't know of who. And so at the end of the day, she'll have to run for that seat. But today, as of yesterday, mm-hmm. when Mayor Byron Brown swore her in, she became the chief judge. First woman ever, on the same day that a Supreme Court African American woman was sworn into the Supreme Court. Mm. I try my best not to cry. I'll just get right to the point. And so, I was there for her swearing in as judge when the mayor appointed her. And it was fine, it was fine. This time, for some reason, and maybe because it was history making, and because she's standing next to Deborah Givens from the Court of Claims to swear her in. Who's African-American woman. She's standing next to African-American mayor. She's standing next to African-American male Supreme Court justice. And when I looked at all of that melanin up in the front, and he says, I think it was when he said the first woman, and my eyes watered up. I'm like, no, you don't. Bruh, sit there and be cool. You got on a suit. Be cool. And I look over, and Monique is holding my granddaughter. And I'm thinking my granddaughter's falling asleep. Oh, my gosh. She is boo-hooing. When I say boo-hooing, I'm talking about the type of boo-hoo that wets the tissue up, okay? Boo-hooing hard. And so now I'm and then Chief Judge Pridgen thanks her father-in-law after she thanked everybody. Her mother and father were there. It was wonderful. Her husband is there. Craig is wonderful. But then she thanks because we had these conversations. And what I have impressed, and I didn't have to impress it upon her much because her parents had already impressed it upon her. Bishop Young was there. She came up in the Church of God in Christ. They've already impressed her. I've always said just be fair with people. Treat them like you want to be treated. And some people will treat you well and some of them won't. But at the end of the day, you get to go home and know that I did the best that I could. And even sitting on that bench, and she her last assignment was in domestic violence court, which is very stressful. And I attended her courts a couple times, and I mean, I've seen people cuss her out. I can't even say on radio. Like, she ain't even made a decision yet. Told her what part of anatomy to kiss, all that kind of stuff. And I'm thinking to myself, ain't you gonna throw him in jail? And she just would look over, please control your client. Control your client. And deal with the situation as fairly as she could. So I believe, although there were many other judges who would be worthy of that assignment, I want to thank the mayor for choosing what I feel, you know. So that's that. I wanted to say big ups to that. Let's talk about this whole East Side, East Buffalo. Now, I was in a meeting today, and one of the people in the meeting, you could tell they were struggling to make sure they didn't say East Side. And I just wanted to say, it's okay for you to say East Side to me. And at the end of the day, I know that there's a resolution that has been filed by my colleague, and I think it was wise to send it to committee and not vote on it. And I'll just be transparent. Some of the council members don't want to even weigh in on it because they don't live on these sides. So they're saying like, hey, I don't want to get in this side. I don't live on these side. And I respect that of being able to say, hey, that's not my wheelhouse. That's another good reason for the at-large. Another good reason for at-large. And so I know that there are people who say, don't say East Side anymore. I'm not one of those people. I'm not one of those people that's saying you got to say East Buffalo. When you talk to me, you could say East Side, you could say East Buffalo, you could say Buffalo East.
Just don't disrespect it.
Yeah, because the one thing I've said, and I said it in the news the other day, you can rebrand an area by name, but if the contents are the same, thinking of East Buffalo in a or East Side in a negative, it'll just be Buffalo. What is it? East Buffalo in a negative.
Yeah.
And so that's why it's so important. Listen, folks, if you want to talk about, now you might not see me at a whole lot of public meetings about the whole rebranding and all that. But let me tell you, Pridgen been working. I'll just say this week, representative from the White House sitting in my office. And what was I talking about? Greater funding, but funding that made sense. And this is what I mean. Funding that comes down that not only helps people stay in their neighborhoods, but helps them to own businesses Here it is, in their neighborhoods. Because I'm going to say it again, and I said it yesterday at a community meeting. You can bring in all of the big box stores you want to. That CEO is not going to be living on Landon.
Sure ain't.
That means because we love to bang each other up when we got a little bit. But the folks that's got the most, they sitting out at their pool house right now with their sunken pool, having a what's the drink with the olive in it?
Martini.
Martini. Well, we have to have wealth, right? So anyway, I've been in touch. I mean, we've been meeting and talking, and the administration has been meeting and talking, and really trying to make sure that the rebrand, if you want to call it that, and just changing a name is just not enough. That's why I said about Perry Projects. If you ask my uncle, you about the Perry homes, he's going to say, you're talking about the Perry Projects. And this is what disappoints me. We're starting to be divided in our community over a name. We did not allow a white supremacist to divide us. Nobody crashed the windows of Tops. Nobody broke up the neighborhood, tore up the stores, looted. Nobody that I know of. No, there was no big mass movement. I'll put it to you that way. Why would we now split over a name, and then now, like, if you believe in East Side, calling it East Side, or you believe in calling it East Buffalo, like you're the devil on the other side. Stop it. I believe people ought to be able to call their side of town what they want it to be called. Now, one of the speakers today talked about, not renaming the Fruit Belt and all that. I want you to know, you can go online and see, I have a resolution that has been there to keep historic names of neighborhoods as they are. Am I right, Mark?
Yep, it's there.
You can go right on and look at the agenda of where's it at in legislation. Mm-hmm. In the legislation committee, you can see the year that I filed it. It was during COVID, I believe. So that when you look at different maps like Google, or that I wanted the names of the historic neighborhoods to be there and to not mess with them. There has never been a move to change, not from me. Let me say this. Never been a move for me to change the name Fruit Belt from Fruit Belt. Never. And I'm going to tell you why. Does the Fruit Belt have a reputation in its history of gangs and violence? Yes, it absolutely does. Does the Fruit Belt now have that same reputation? Nope. Does it have any violence? Yep. But does it also now have very organized community groups and people who own their homes and take care of their homes? Yes. So that same negative connotation that was there, if you work on a neighborhood, same thing like this new project that's going up right now. We made sure that developers didn't come in and now we can't live. It was all about affordability, access, right? So nobody got put out of Pilgrim Village because we insisted. We would not support it because it also had to go through the federal government because HUD is involved. And I would not support it. I said it from the beginning. If we were displacing people. Now, I know what some people, if you've never lived in a housing development, you don't understand that some people, that's where they live for the rest of their lives. Mm-hmm. And so it does become their home. I know I'm not a live witness for myself, but I wouldn't want my grandmother when she was living in Perry to be put out because development comes, and I wouldn't want your grandmother to be put out. At the end of the day, I better not go over. And now I live a couple blocks from the Fruit Belt. I'm not going to the Fruit Belt until the Fruit Belt changes their name. Now, if the Fruit Belt come to me and say, Pridgen, we want, this is what I'm your representative. You want to be called Belt Fruit? Belt Fruit. But it should not divide us. It reminds me of when we go from being called, at one point, Negro, to, mm-hmm. to Black, to African American. If somebody says, I'm black, and I use the phrase I'm African American, I ain't about to argue with you. You can call you what you want to call you. Just don't force me to call you that. So I know the news and everybody's trying real hard to say East Buffalo, and I'm good with that. But I don't think if somebody says East Side, that there ought to be letters to the editor of how insensitive somebody is. Robin Worthy, Veronica Ivy says, so historical preservation only applies to buildings and not names? I'm not sure what the question is.
No, it's not a question. It's more of a statement. She's basically saying that, people will preserve a building, but the names can be changed.
Yeah, Veronica. That's why I have the resolution in.
From 2019.
2019. I want y'all to know, I didn't just start working on this stuff. Now, there's certain things I can't write. I have to wait on the law department to write it. We just got something passed that I wrote for legislation for mobile businesses. Takes time. But at the end of the day, I've always said historical names should remain historical names. It's there. Go look in the legislative archives. Not archives. You can look. The item has been tabled. I'm going to push it. And I agree with you, Veron. I get what you're saying now. It's not just about buildings. It is about names. But this is what we so easily do. We start to lose focus and concentration. And we start to fight over the low-hanging fruit. If you want to call it East Buffalo, please, by all means, call it East Buffalo. That's your option. This is America, not the Soviet Union. Mm-hmm. If you want to call it East Side, call it East Side. But don't vilify another person because they make their choice.
And I think it's like you said, it's like when we immediately after the tragedy, right? And I would hear you start saying this in interviews. If we start arguing and only talking about one store or we need another store in the black community, then that's all we're going to get.
Yep.
And so to me, the same principle applies here. If we know we need all of these other needs, but yet all we end up doing now is fighting over a name, then you're going to have people sitting back saying, okay, well, all they want to do is a new sign that says East Buffalo. And then that's all we're still going to end up with.
Amen. That's what we're going to end up with, because that's where we putting so much focus and concentration on. I will wear a shirt in a minute that says I'm from the East Side, because that's where I'm from. This is crazy. Spectrum is calling me. Anyway, I would wear a shirt all day to say I'm from the East Side. And I don't have a problem wearing a shirt that says East Buffalo.
Just design it right.
East Side just got to be bigger.
Right. I'll wear whatever as long as it look good.
Justine Harris says, good afternoon. I wish a black developer or whatever folks like Magic Johnson would build a multiplex entertainment center, and some black billionaires and millionaires here in Buffalo would build a building
with suites for black businesses owners could occupy like they have in Charlotte.
Well, I mean, I'm not saying that anything can't happen once we start pulling out each other's eyes.
Yeah.
Let me tell you this. One of the developers of Pilgrim Village, and I want to say all due respect to Pilgrim Village, the church, who has been through litigation about that land, but it's not with the litigation, from what I believe, was not with this developer. It was so I'm not in any way acting like that is not a sore spot for Pilgrim. Here is the deal. He's an African American man.
Yep.
I think he said he went to Columbia or somewhere.
Yes.
Graduated. He's an urban planner. Went into business with a guy he graduated with. And now they're building Pilgrim Village. And not only are they building Pilgrim Village, they built the Forge.
Shout out to Dr. Rhonda Ricks.
Down to Rhonda Ricks. That's how I met these folks, was Rhonda Ricks bringing them to my office at City Hall going, they have know-how, they know how to do this, I'm partnering with them, African American. Now, let me say this. I want to be clear. Right now, we have African American developers on the nonprofit side, which is wonderful. I want to say this 28 times. I am loving seeing all of these new partnerships, and there's some on the way that I don't have the liberty to tell you. Other churches that are developing, like I have never had as many meetings with African American not-for-profit groups who want to do projects. And one of the biggest things that I wanted when I was elected was to see more people of color, specifically African Americans, be at the helm. You got that, right? So I'm supporting, there are times that I have to say no on things because other things are there, but I say a big shout out, and I've said this, to St. John and redoing McCarley, getting in there, and the development company that is actually doing that, getting in there, talking to people. I supported it because the people in McCarley was like, Heggs, yeah, I want a new bathroom. Heggs, yeah, I want a new
kitchen.
Yeah, new kitchen. And that costs, to do it, that costs. And so big ups to Mount Aaron, big ups to Mount Olive, big ups to Bethesda. I could keep going, folks, because there's some other folks on the horizon that I am so excited about. But with all that said, when we talk about Black millionaires, billionaires, I know that Pastor Chapman has a program that he's been trying to implement. At the end of the day, we also have to support Black developers who are profit. And I'm going to tell you why. We can't say, ooh, big ups to Magic Johnson or others who, they're not in the not-for-profit world largely. Right. But they've made $1 million, and they have been reinvesting in their communities, opening charter schools, opening different things. You cannot spread big bucks if you don't have big bucks.
I was getting ready to say, we mentioned Magic Johnson. To my knowledge, Magic Johnson is not involved with really too much. He doesn't have a not-for-profit that he's out here making. He invested in movie theaters, Starbucks, and everything else to make money. And has part ownership in sports teams. So it's not a
absolutely
all give back to the community. It is definitely some for-profit.
But he has the leverage and sits on. We sit on boards here, they're volunteer boards. You go to the meeting and they say, we need you to help us raise money so we can do the summer program. The boards he sits on, he gets paid to sit on.
Yes.
Do y'all hear me? So if we celebrate Black wealth that's not in Buffalo, you got to celebrate Black wealth that wants to be in Buffalo and from Buffalo.
Absolutely.
But I'm going to just say this. There's some people, I ain't going to say a lot, because I think there's fewer, but I think that their voices are sometimes so loud that hate Black wealth. And there's some of them are Black people.
Most are. Because I'll be honest, I don't think a Black wealthy person gets really intimidated when someone of another race disparages them, because you kind of expect that. It's when you go to your own community saying, I'm here to invest, and then get beat up for it, that hurts, I think, way more than being disparaged by someone from another race.
I totally agree. Now, this brother who was there today, I forgot his name.
Ernest Valerie.
He didn't know our name. Well, he knew my name. He didn't know some of the other names because he's not from here. But nobody's saying, oh, he shouldn't be rich. Oh, he poverty pimping. Nobody's saying that. No. You know why? Because when he leaves and gets back on that plane, he going back to wherever he lived, New York City or wherever they're based out of, right? And he's going to build in Buffalo. The problem is, I think some people think that all development and developers are bad people. When I first got elected, all I heard, ain't no development on east side, ain't no development on east side, ain't no development on east side. Then when we started developing, because right now, many of the projects are in the Ellicott district. Many projects going on right now. The veterans over by Monroe Street, housing and public. That's elegant. And I'm not taking credit for that. It's fertile land right now, period. At the end of the day, though, I am taking credit that I do have to work with people who are going to build those things.
Right.
And that I press developers down to Douglas Jamal.
Mm-hmm.
That you got to put it, you want city property? Got to be affordable housing, some affordable housing in that project. Boom, 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 boom. But if Douglas Jamal was African American and from Buffalo, Lord have mercy.
Help us. Some
of the people that look like Douglas Jamal, we got to see that as kind of a sickness, folks, that we have been programmed to almost hate one another and each other's progression. And I said this at a community meeting yesterday. When we talk about the rebranding of Jefferson and or just let's say the bringing life to Jefferson.
Yes.
I'm not even going to say the revitalization because you don't want Jefferson to be what it was, folks. So stop. You can say that, but black people did not own anything on Jefferson. They didn't. And there was traffic that was going through Jefferson so people can make money, right? 33 is dug out and people can get in the city and out of the city fast. They no longer go down Jefferson. The buildings start to collapse and the businesses can't sustain and you're left with blight. I said this and I'm going to keep saying it so until I'm heard. You want Jefferson to be what Jefferson should be for this time.
Absolutely.
You want people to be able to walk to their businesses. And I use you got to have, that's why been talking to the federal government saying, we need some incentives so that people can afford to build retail space that is not expensive and smaller retail space. Brandy Merriweather, who's doing a great job with the pop-ups, just little small shops where you can finally be in a space for a short time and get your products out there. What happens when you have retail spaces where the people who live in the neighborhood are able to open up? So there's a guy, and I'm not going to say where because I don't want nobody harassing him, who sells plants in the city of Buffalo. He ain't got no storefront. He sits in a chair and he puts his plants on the table, and I go there and I buy plants from him. Imagine if he could grow and walk around to his shop. Big ups to the flower shop on Fillmore.
Anderson's
is right on Fillmore. You want to know where True Bethel gets their flowers? Anderson's. And they have a good product. And they're not going to bang you over the head. Veronica Ivy says the same way we can't live in the same house like the Uber driver. Yep. Veronica, we have to learn how to pool our resources together.
Absolutely.
And support one another. And then not to tear down a business because you had one bad experience or two. You had a bad experience at Mickey D's.
Sure did. Multiple.
You still took Nook and them over there. Still went and got those fries.
Still can't get ice cream past 8 o'clock.
Still can't get ice cream past 8 o'clock. Is that true?
Oh, if you ever go to McDonald's,
nothing about
after
I
a
can't
certain
eat ice
time,
cream.
Anytime you go to a lot of fast food restaurants now, you go after a certain time, the machine is always down, and instead of them just being like, we turned it off because we don't feel like dealing with it, they always say the machine is down. It's just a terrible experience.
Katrina, I think she's talking about our conversation about renaming. She says the butler at Genesee. What?
That might be a project. I don't know.
Oh, okay. I don't even know what it is, Katrina. You got to tell me. I thought you was talking about name changing. The living together, the boosting one another, the being happy and supportive.
Yeah.
I think it's okay, especially since we have been marginalized, we've been the last left out. It's okay to purposely seek out an African-American business. Matter of fact, we got a lot of complaints about the lots in Ellicott, the city lots. What did we do, Mark?
We ran into and we'll be contracting a black lawn care company.
Yes. A African American. He said, I'll do it. I'll do it. Here's my price. That means when you call us and a lot hasn't been cleaned in Ellicott, we then call him and we will have that lawn cleaned up. It's not going to be, they ain't going to come out and put no roses, but he will come and with his company, the lines that have been left up. And I do believe the city of Buffalo is getting ready to do the same thing, but we wanted to have our own also. So that when you call our office, you say, Pridgen, this lot looks a mess. They just cut it. Now, folks, he's not a genie. He can't fly in right away. It might take 2 or 3 days. But if we tell you he's coming, he's coming. And we'll be able to ask him what day and let your neighborhood know. Absolutely. That's important to me.
And I was going to say in the other conversation, too, I think, because I have this struggle when I go back home and see Wilmington, Delaware, I think at a certain point, we have to begin the transition from just having a ton of affordable housing and no additional services.
Absolutely.
Because, when I go back home, I'm like, oh, ain't nothing changed but another apartment building went up. Or at some point, you have to start seeing the coffee shops, the laundromats.
Yes.
And I think we're approaching that pinnacle where now we have the population. Let's start putting the businesses back in.
Absolutely.
So to create the neighborhood and community.
Like the one thing I don't want to see on Jefferson, and there's not a lot of space left on Jefferson, folks.
Not city owned.
I don't want it, right, not city owned, is I don't want to just see a bunch of apartment buildings go up. The downstairs, it's okay to put the apartment buildings up, but there got to be services. Like you said, there's got to be a dry cleaners. There's got to be, a deli. A real deli that has delicatessen stuff.
Yes.
Let
me get a good sub.
Yeah. So those type of things. Listen, I got to get ready to go because I haven't had a chance to spend time with the sponsors. I really want to thank Hobson's, the Doctor Dry Cleaning. Listen, let me take a minute to, again, say right in our community, Hobson's is right there, has been there. Even through the pandemic when things got really tough and they still have not fully recovered like most businesses. So it's important to me that you go over to Hobson's, 874 East Delavan, and support those who have stayed, remained, and invested, paid taxes in the city of Buffalo. Mrs. Hobson, thank you for what you do and your team over at Hobson's, the Doctor Dry Cleaning, 874 East Delavan. Brian K. Lewis, and I want to say this, Sunday morning, True Bethel is hiring a few of our members, the younger ones who couldn't get Mayor Summer Youth jobs, so that we can cut the grass of our seniors who belong to True Bethel and our sick and shut in. And we bought a vehicle for it and invested in equipment. And so we were hiring about 3 of them part-time. And Brian K. Lewis sends me a message, hey, if you hire 3, I'll hire 3. So that means we're able to hire several young people to work a few days a week, put a little change in their pockets. They can go to the movies and maybe put a little savings account together for them so that they have their first savings account, some of them. He said that. I want to thank Brian for always investing in the community and taking care of so many families at 347 Peckham and 2528 Bailey and 1275 Sycamore. Brian K. Lewis. My wife has fallen in love with the funeral industry, fallen in love assisting him at times. It is like the highlight of her day if he calls to assist him. And I want to thank him for piquing her interest in it. I've always been interested in the funeral home industry, but once she got inside, she was able to see why. I think that the funeral home industry is so very, very important. Thank you, Brian K. Lewis, for all you do. Well, we got to go. Have a safe 4th of July weekend. Safe. If you're out there popping them crackers, popping them firecrackers, listen, do be safe. They land on people's roofs. You got to be careful. We don't want to see one fire in the city of Buffalo because of firecrackers. Okay? Until next week, power to the people.